You're listening to another ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
This is Women in Leadership Podcast, featuring success insights from women around the globe. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of Women in Leadership Podcast, brought to you by the Influence Alliance, which is the membership program for coaches and consultants who want to build a profitable and scalable business while also launch and grow their Thought Leader podcast so that they can make a much bigger impact in the world with their message. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. Now, my guest on today's show says we are braver together. And joining me today is Dr. Jody Carrington. Now, over the past 15 years, Jody has assessed, treated, educated, and empowered some of our most vulnerable and precious souls on the planet. She is a child psychologist by trade, but rarely treats kids. Now, the answer lies, she believes, are in the people who hold them, especially when kids have experienced trauma. That's when they need big people the most. Some of her favorites include educators, parents, first responders, foster parents. Jody has shifted the way they think and feel about the holy work that they do. Now, on today's show, Jody is going to share how to stay connected in a disconnected world, how to tackle the flipped lid that can prevent us from doing hard things, as well as you can't tell people how to do important things. You have to show them. So welcome to the show, Jody. How are you?
Oh, Anne-Marie, I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me. What an intro. That's good.
Oh, I tell you, I'm so excited about today's show, particularly when we think of the last couple of years of all of the changes, the pressures, the uncertainty, all of it. I mean, it's put a lot of additional pressure on everyone, but particularly the little ones, I think, too, because, sometimes as parents, we forget that how we approach things is role modeling it to the ones who are observing us. And often as, adults who are uncertain, if we're not able to navigate, how is that impacting our kids and the disconnected world, so many of them, lots and lots and lots of deep topics to talk about today.
Well, I think what sorry, did I cut you off there?
No, go.
What I really love is, we're really a barometer for each other. So not even, this makes the most sense to me where this all started in my head was between parents and children, but it's true about all of us. It reminds me of this Ram Dass quote that I keep over my shoulder because I have to be reminded myself every day. He said this: we're all just here walking each other home. And it's like the people who are closest to us, if they're not okay, we're not okay. And, I think it was the biggest thing that I sort of learned in this process of, working in the world of child psychiatry was really like, gosh, we can spend a long time. I can see your kid every day to the end of their lives. And if I send them back into a system that's unhealthy, it's a waste of time. Yes. And it's like so much of us right now, I really want us to think about as we navigate this disconnected, overwhelmed, burnt out, as I navigate my team through, these years, it's like if those of us aren't okay, who are setting the stage for some of these things, the people we lead don't stand a chance.
Absolutely. Let's dive in because I know that you've got so many insights that you want to share with us. Now, those of you who are listening and, just kind of watching this, if you do have a question, please feel free to type it in the comments and then I will pose that question to Dr. Jody because this is important. Our little ones are important. You're important too. I mean, as you said, we all support one another. We all have the ability to walk each other home, and how we do that, let's do that in such an empowered way that we can make a difference in the lives of everyone that we meet. So what do we need to know about how to stay connected in a very disconnected world?
Well, I think at the root of it is we really got to cut ourselves some slack or give ourselves some grace. I hear so many times people are like, I'm so exhausted, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so tired. Is this normal? Why am I sleeping, 12 hours and still feel tired? Why can't I sleep? Why am I chippy and irritable? I mean, divorce rates are rising like we've never seen them before. Domestic violence is higher. Child maltreatment numbers are higher. And we're sort of like, is this really about the pandemic? Are we really? Yes, it is. When we have been in a disconnected place for so long, and where there were cracks before, there'll be crevices now. Yeah. And so much about this is when we put things under pressure and we have nowhere to refuel, it's going to bend and maybe even break. And I think for now going on, 2 years, we are in this place where, we're wired for connection. Human beings, how we regulate each other is, we're in relationship with one another. In fact, if you disconnect from an infant, they die. Our ability to walk each other home, per se, is the healthiest among us, regardless of what happens to us. If we have a good support network, we can navigate any storm. Yeah. We can survive job loss and divorce and even bury our own children. And we do that more successfully when we have people who can navigate those emotions with us. And in the history of the free world, we've never been more disconnected than we are right now. Even prior to the pandemic, think about the square footage of the house that, our grandfathers were raised in. And think about the square footage of the house that we raise our babies in. Think about the size of the beds that our grandparents slept in. Think about the size of the beds that we sleep in, with our partners. By virtue of the lack of proximity that has occurred in just 2 generations, we have not kept up with the relationship skills necessary to stay connected to the people we love. Yeah. We text people. That doesn't change the same. Our neurochemistry doesn't change the same as when I actually grab your hands and look at you in the eye. If we were doing this podcast together in the same room, there would be a completely different neurochemical response to each other, you and I, because we're in the same physical presence of each other. Our cortisol decreases quicker. Our oxytocin, our dopamine goes up. This is great. Technological advances have allowed so many things to happen, but how we use them becomes critical. And it is safer to do a Zoom call or to text your partner than it is to actually sit down and say, hey, babe, I think we really need to talk about something. And we will take those exit ramps so much more because we don't have the bandwidth that we used to, because we're less filled up than we used to. And it gets into this cycle of, and then we introduced COVID, which said, for the physical safety of our globe, we need to disconnect from each other. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've seen now, almost 2 years of, our children and our organizations experiencing this disconnect that really will leave not only a paucity in relationships, but really a mental health crisis that is going to really make it more difficult to do the things that we need, which is to look at each other again, to sit down comfortably with each other again. So, my biggest concern right now is the mental health pandemic that's on our hands. And I think for the rest of my life, that will be the thing that I talk about, because we will never automate connection.
No, that's right. And I think what you just said, giving ourselves the grace that, hey, we need to be more aware of that of the things that are happening, so that we then can provide the environments that we need or surround ourselves with what we need to be able to move forward in the best possible way. What are some ways then that we can do? What are some things that you can see are so important for us to start doing, even if we are still in a situation where we are encouraged not to get it within large groups or smaller groups face to face? What are some things we can start doing?
Yeah, I think, so much of the time, there's a sort of a 2-step process that I think is really important to figure out, is that we want to fix it all the time, right? So we want to look for strategies and suggestions. I think one of the first things I really think is so critical is just acknowledging the space for each other, because, when you're acknowledged, you will rise. And so much of the time we just want to fix it. How about we try, do this? We need to get back on track. We're worried about outcomes. We're doing it. Okay. Yeah, let's get there. But let's not forget to acknowledge that your listeners, have had a lot on their shoulders in these last 24 months, that we've navigated so many things that used to fill up our souls, like funerals and weddings and the birth of the, babies in our families, holidays, things that, used to, wings with the girls on Wednesday night, beers after hockey on Friday. Like many of those things have been suspended, and that comes at a cost. So let's think about, before we ever sort of pressure ourselves to step back in, let's really know that, I say this so often, Anne-Marie, but I'm so grateful to be alive in this season, as hard as it has been, because it is so easy. You want to know why? The bar is so low. The bar is so low to just be a good human right now. You give somebody a compliment and they want to make out with you. I buy somebody's coffee and they're like, oh, thank you. So let's really sort of put this into context as we think about how we, what is your job in this next season as a human being in this human race? Because we get so lost in this, can I make a difference? And I'm so exhausted and I can't even look after my own children, let alone thinking about higher order functioning like innovation or creativity or something. Our only job, the only way I get through every single day these days is believing that my only job is to do the next best, right, kind thing. Next best, right, kind thing. That's all I got on my plate any single day. And it's interesting because those are the things that won't only change people's lives, they might save it right now.
Yeah.
So if you think about the importance of simply this, every time you come to a stop sign or a stoplight between now and the end of February, I want you to wave like you're drunk. I want you to engage with people in your community. Do you know what happens? Can you imagine if you pulled up to a stoplight on your way home or out to get groceries or something today, and the fellow beside you was just, like, huh? Hey, what? First of all, what happens is we re-engage in that moment. We reconnect because first of all, we got to figure out if he's okay.
Yeah.
Which means it needs my prefrontal cortex back on track. We're going to get that lid flipped back on, which means I'm not in my heads of should be, would be, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm whatever those things. I'm going to be pulled back into that moment. The other thing that's really critical about this is when we start to look and see the people in our environments, it actually serves us well, regardless of how they respond. So if you think about the other thing I want you to do is see if you can hand out a compliment once a day. And genuinely feel it. I mean, like there's a difference between like, yeah, I really like your plants to like, seriously, what is that plant growing in the, like, I love that. That is beautiful. How do we sort of step into that? And I think it does way more for us than it does for the receiver when we can do it in a place because it calms our ability to sort of regulate emotion. And then the other thing that I think is so critical is just really not worrying about anybody else other than dropping your shoulders as much as you can. And we often talk about the importance of breath and, all of those things, primarily because when we are in a heightened state of arousal, which we have been undoubtedly for 24 months, our shoulders are up, our breathing is more shallow, and we lose access to things like kindness, compassion, and empathy. And so the antidote for me, and it's a little reminder I have on my phone, it goes off every hour. Nobody knows except for you now. But when it goes off, all I know is I got to do this. I just got to drop my shoulders. And every time I get the reminder, guess where my shoulders are?
Yeah, up there.
Every time. And so it's just really this idea that although like so many of us are good at this and we practice, however, we try to drink our water and go for a run or be kind to people or all those things in the run of this day, because we have so many things these days, so many things on our plates, and we have the access to be inundated by everybody else's social media in a heartbeat. The comparative suffering is on bust most days, And so gratitude, just like joy, just like anything you want to get good at, is a practice. So like your golf swing or spirituality or yoga, if you don't practice it, you're not good at it. And really getting reconnected into your body is the thing we're really not good at right now.
Yeah. And sometimes the most simplest of things are the most important. And I love the way that you were talking about kind of the compliments and waving at people. The other day, my husband and I went to the shops. We thought, well, let's just go and grab something to eat. And we had a meal and it tasted wonderful. It was really nice. And normally I wouldn't do this. I mean, I would just be thinking about the next thing that I needed to do. And I said, I'm actually going to go up to that person. And I did. I said to the two women that were serving, I said, I just wanted to let you know that this is the best meal of the dish that I've ever tasted. So thank you very much. Just wanted to let you know. And I just thought, you just don't know. They may have been having a bad day. But how often just a simple thing like that,
right?
Just make their day. And it made me feel really good too. That's
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many stories like that. Like I love, there's this time where I was driving down and I was stopped at a stoplight and I was thinking about all the 65 things I had to do and why I wasn't home with my kids and like, how am I failing them? And I looked in my rearview mirror at a stoplight and there was this mom in a beat up old minivan. And she had her kid in the front seat, looked like he was about 13, and she was dancing. Okay. And I don't mean maybe, like, I mean, like the shoulders were rolling, the hands were going, and she was like shimmying into the steering wheel. And this poor 13-year-old kid was mortified. Okay. He had his face pushed up against the passenger side window. And what's interesting about this guy is he had a helmet on. So there's some kind of developmental delay going on with this babe, but he was very much aware of that his mom was like being ridiculous. And I was so caught up in watching this beautiful display that I missed the light. And so 2 cars behind us started honking. So I was like, oh shit. And so then I kept going and we went around the corner and I was going to this training with a nurse that I had been working with for a long time. And I thought to myself, I need to tell her how amazing she is. And so I didn't turn off where I was supposed to. I said to Melissa, I need to follow her. And she's like, what? I said, I need to tell her how amazing she is. She said, right now? I said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to find her again. And so then in my head, I was like, I hope she's not going far. And she didn't go very far. And I pulled in behind her. And, Melissa said to me, take your sunglasses off. Like, Jesus, like you're going to. So I got out of the car and I knocked on her window and she sort of looked at me and rolled down the window. And I said, I'm so sorry to bother you. I said, I just needed to tell you I was parked behind you at the last stoplight. And you have this sickest dance moves. And she's like, oh God. And I said, I just wanted to tell you, I don't know who this little guy is beside you, but he's so lucky to have you. That was a beautiful display of love back there. And she looked at me, grabbed my hand and said, you don't know how much I needed to hear that today. Thank you. And I got back into my car. And as I was backing out, I watched her carry this baby. He's immobile, up the stairs. And I just thought, okay. Right? 20 seconds. 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think like we all have the capacity to alter the trajectory of a life and it costs us nothing.
Yeah.
And in fact, it'll give us so much more. And it's going to require that reconnection piece, that really conscious effort to say, I've got it bad and so does other people, but comparative suffering will get us nowhere. How do we give it away?
Yeah.
It's the best of our capacity.
So important. So important. It always has been, but even
this isn't new.
New. And that's why I'm so glad. And that's really what you're just sharing is really what my question was about. What can we start reintroducing and doing that is not focused on outcomes, KPIs, all of those different things, but the things that really matter, because they could change. That compliment, that smile, that wave, could change the trajectory of someone's life, because you don't know what's happening and you don't know that person could have then had another challenge and another challenge. But that wave, that smile, that compliment could be enough for them to say, well, someone actually saw me, someone acknowledged me, and you just don't know, do you?
No, you don't. And the cool thing about it is that it pays no mind to race, religion, socioeconomic status, gender identity. Like the more dislike or unalike you are from another, the more powerful it appears to be. Okay. Does this make sense? So I told the story today because this is just, I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to tell you the story because it just like is my proudest moment of ever. My son is 11 and we changed him to a middle school and he has, struggles socially. He's just way too bright for his own good, but really not very good socially. So he gets into this new school and we're really excited about, is he going to make friends? He's coming home from school every day sad. He hasn't made friends. He does things like play his ukulele on the way home. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. And so he came home, this is a year ago now. And he said to me, Mom, I made a friend today. I got to tell you about my new friend. And I said, oh, that's exciting. What's his name? He said, it's Old Bill. I said, sorry? His name's Old Bill. And I said, well, you have a kid at school named Old Bill? He said, no. This is this man that I speak to on my way home. He lives in the house beside the path and he's a retired teacher. He's 93. Oh, okay. And so I go to meet Old Bill the next day. Asher has been stopping at Old Bill's house for the last 2 weeks. He sits down and explains to me, this is Old Bill's family. And Old Bill says to me, listen, you need to know that I've taught in this community for 40 years. Your son's remarkable. They became best friends over a year. And Old Bill passed away on January 6th. And I have never, ever seen my son so full of tears, losing his best friend, who's 93 years old. And they had the most in-depth conversations. We would stop by and this old guy would, get him an ice cream cone and they would sit on the deck and talk about everything. Yeah. And it just really reminded me, right? It pays no mind, this relationship thing, to anything, right? We all need it so desperately in this moment. And so, give it away whenever you can, because my goodness, if you only knew.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Love that. Love, love, love that. Let's talk about how to tackle the flipped lid that can prevent us from doing the hard things. What's the flipped lid? Just for those who, let's get on the same page with what do you mean by flipped lid?
Yeah, I love that. So it's a term by, so I learned it from Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a psychiatrist, who's written amazing things. And he really explained the sort of neurological underpinnings to emotional dysregulation. So I often say this as a psychologist, the most important thing we ever need to know is how to stay calm in times of distress. Because if you have the skill to regulate emotion, you will do well in this world, full stop. You will do better socially. You will be able to handle hard relationships. You will be able to, make friends, do well in school to the best of your cognitive ability when you have the ability to stay calm in times of distress. And the only way we learn that is in relationship with other people. In fact, when we bring babies home from the hospital, the way they communicate is to lose their friggin' minds. They cry. And big people are there to walk them home. We soothe them. And the more time we do that to our children, the more they start to learn how to regulate on their own. And by the time we send them to school, they can hold it together for longer periods of time. And our hope is if you have enough big people in your life to teach you those skills, when you grow up, you have enough to be able to teach them to your babies. Yeah.
Yes.
And part of, obviously what messes that up is trauma, and particularly intergenerational trauma and, unprocessed hard stuff. And what is interesting about what Dan Siegel says is that he said, I really want you to think about your brain as sort of two parts, like the main part of it, which is our limbic system, our brainstem, the very, primitive way that we function, which all mammals share. It's where our fight, flight, and freeze responses live, the very primitive way we regulate emotion, fight, flight, and freeze. What separates humans from most other mammals is the prefrontal cortex that sits on top of that primal way of functioning. And he said, I want you to think about that as a lid. When that lid is on, you have access to everything you've ever learned in your life, your language, how to be kind and calm, the middle name of your partner, the PIN number to your bank card. When you are calm, you have access to all of those things. From a biological perspective, when we lose our minds, when we flip our lids, we don't need those things in place. If we're getting chased by a bear or we're, the house is on fire, I need to flip all of that extraneous information out of the way and fight, flight, or freeze. The problem is when we don't learn how to regulate emotion over the course of our life and something distresses us and we just flip our lid, lose our friggin' mind, we get back to fight, flight, and freeze. And so what we think about is when our babies are little, 0 to 2, they flip their lids all the time because they really need somebody to show them how to regulate so they can start to learn that prefrontal, how to get those skills in their prefrontal cortex. If nobody's taught you that enough, or if you haven't had enough people to do that, we grow into adults who just flip our lids, lose our friggin' minds when things get tough. And if we get into a relationship with somebody who's a big lid flipper and we're a big lid flipper, you can imagine how well that goes, right? You lose your friggin' mind, I lose my friggin' mind. And then, it's the heart of all domestic violence, at the extreme, but it is also what happens when couples sort of get in an unhealthy dynamic with each other. You just walk away, I just leave, I keep talking, you don't. The idea is really about how do we sort of pay attention to regulating emotion? How do we drop those shoulders, get back in our body, have access to our words, our kindness, our compassion, our empathy? And so much about that is how do we do that for ourselves? Because we can't give it away if we're dysregulated first. And so the most important part of this whole process is, how do we get back into our own space and our own body so we can help the people we love, not help, but be in a place to assist in the other way. Now, I often try to preface this by saying, violence, domestic violence, all of those things, like all bets are off. Like if somebody is unkind or and hurtful, it's not about regulating another human being that we really need to get to. It's about safety is the number one priority always. But secondarily to that is our ability to stay calm in times of distress. And some of the most important, I think, powerful leaders have that skill. That even when, shit's falling off the rails, they have the capacity to say, okay. Let's sit down. We're going to figure this out one step at a time. It doesn't mean they don't get angry or upset or, whatever the deal is, but it's that capacity to stay present, particularly in times of, when problems need to be figured out. And I think right now, when we're under stress, when we've been through a couple of years of disconnection, mental health is struggling on a whole. You can imagine that what we are up against a lot is flipped lids. That what we're struggling with in our employees or our husbands or our partners or our children is a lot of flipped lids. And we don't like flipped lids. We want to fix it. So we say things like this: calm down, relax. And this is my personal favorite when I say this to my kids: be kind. Yeah? Isn't that something? You can't tell somebody how to be kind. You got to show them.
Yeah.
And so it's really that idea that if, you and I become my top priority when I think about how do we change this world. It's like, if I can be in a place to sort of be the best, do the next best right kind thing, I know the people around me are going to be much more capable to do that. Yes. And so much about that comes back to, what do we have control over? How do we really engage in this process that, in this time of disconnect, we're empty, we're exhausted, we're overwhelmed? How do I do my very best to not do the self-care stuff? Because I don't think you can self-care yourself out of bad systems, but really, how do we build those relationships again? And understand that that's the heart of all things first, and then we act.
Yes. And so if you realize, or if someone's listening and realizes, okay, I can see that we need to get better systems, we need to get to a place where we are able to navigate through that, are there some things that they can do? Because as you've said, when things are just so disconnected and they're trying to find a commonality or a place where they can start to move forward when it hasn't been easy. Are there some things that they can start to put into place that helps facilitate that, if that makes sense? Where do they start to get to that stage, is basically what I'm saying, I guess?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think that what's so critical, particularly as we're still in January, there's all these ideas about New Year's resolutions and big goals and dreams. I really love this idea of thinking big, but starting small. And so if we want to shift a system or an organization, we often get lulled into the idea that, okay, let's go straight to the top and just replace management or fire the coach or, do the big sort of systemic changes that we really like. Everybody gets diversity training. There, we're good. That rarely works, right? How do we think big? Yes, I want to be a part of an organization that's inclusive and diverse. And, we think, our systems are in place and we have strategic plans for everything. Like I want that. That's my hope. How do I start small? All I want to start with, in this next moment, and whatever that is for you, I'm going to start by making lists for myself every morning. I forgot to do that. I don't do that anymore. Or I know that I'm going to need to look after myself before I step into this office full of people. So I need 10 minutes on the treadmill before I get dressed every morning, right? And what we want to do, I want to run the 10K that I used to run when I was 25. I was a runner, right? Now, Jesus, I can't even get my sports bra on. I need 2 of them just to keep everybody down, And so then I just give up. I don't want to do it because I can't get back to the big dream really fast. So 10 minutes, that's my only job. I don't even run. I'm just going to walk for 10 minutes, right? I struggle so much with meditation. I struggle so much with sort of staying present. And so I want to be a yogi. I want to okay, I'm going to sign up for yoga classes. I go to those things and I sit there thinking, I don't know what do you mean you want me to just to be present? I got things to do. So
calm your mind. I mean, yeah, that's great. How do I do
my God, shut up. And
empty your mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Like obviously you have nothing to do. It's always my thought. So, my only job has been, I need to do that. I need to be still for 30 seconds. I even set a timer on my phone, 30 seconds. That's my expectation of myself. And what's interesting about that is, think big, start small, is that okay, that wasn't so bad. In fact, by the time I got set up and organized and sitting right, and my 30 seconds are up. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to just do 2 minutes. Fine. Yeah. And it's really just, I think, that idea of how do we just give ourselves grace and really small things to sort of get back into moving towards the things that we really see at the end of the day. And I was speaking to my therapist, I think yesterday, about this process where she said to me, you know, like, can you see where you're going? And I said, yes, absolutely, I can see. But here's what's in the middle. All of this mess, huh? And it's like, that's what's so important though. If you can see the big goal, awesome. Then all you got to do to get through the tangle is the next best right kind thing. Right. And so think big. For sure. I will be on the New York Times bestseller list. That is my goal. We launch the next book in December and it will go all the way. I believe that to be true. How am I going to execute to get there for the next little bit? It's next best right kind thing.
Love that. Love that. I know. I love how you modeled in the example about, you know, you can't tell someone to do something, you have to show them. And a great example of that was be kind. I mean, be kind. You've got to, you know, your language and your mannerisms and your voice, the tone of voice needs to demonstrate what you're hoping to empower in the other person. But are there some other things that you wanted to share, some other insights around for those important things that we want to encourage others to do? And this may not necessarily be our team members, it can be our family members too, who are a key important part of your team, you know, your family unit. How to show them? What are some insights here?
I think what's really critical, and you know, I often talk about this so much, and it seems so simple, but it's really the importance of eye contact. And you know, people say culturally there's different you know, differences around eye contact, but I'll tell you, there's not a single culture on the planet that doesn't make eye contact to socially reference each other. And if we are thinking about, you know, people on the autism spectrum, we still make eye contact, or they still make eye contact to sort of make sure that there's safety involved, right? So this becomes such a critical thing. And if you're still conducting meetings or, you know, visits with your family on Zoom, or like, you know, we're doing today, it still is so critical. I talk about this all the time. Pay close attention to the positioning of your camera. Pay close attention to like, turn your videos on. I see so many people doing meetings and group meetings where they're like, no, we don't want to invade in your privacy. So, you don't need to turn your camera on. Yep, you do. You know, with all due respect, what I need you to see me and I need to see you. If I'm going to stay motivated in this game. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And secondarily, you know, really paying close attention to, you know, we're just hiring a new position this week. And I'm in the middle of Alberta, in a small town, Alberta. And so the access to people that can actually be a part of this team, to be present 2 days a week, limits me significantly, right? When I put out a job, I have a strategic planning position. So I really need a salesperson to sell some of our programs and this message. And it's like, okay, the requirement is you need to be here 2 days a week. And, you know, we had this big discussion with the team. Is it limiting though? Like, what if there's this great opportunity in, you know, Australia, or, you know, this person is just perfect and they're in Toronto. And I said, I'm sad that at this point that we would miss out on that opportunity, but there's no replacement for face-to-face connection. If you're going to feel the energy that we have to be able to change the world, I need you to be a part of it. And I need you to know what we do and how we manage things, and, you know, how we handle the hard stuff. And I can't explain that well enough. And so if we have the luxury of being in the same place, I'm going to take it every single time.
Yeah. So important.
Mm-hmm.
So important. And I love how you've role modeled that. And there are things that are just so important, and you've got to draw the line in the sand, don't you? You've got to know what it is and say, this has to be, you know, and there are some things that we can adapt and not necessarily have to, but there's other things. It's like core values, which is a whole other, you know, episode on its own, but there are some core values that they have to be there because they're core. You know, others maybe not so important, and that's okay. But these are the must-haves.
I think so. And I think, you know, I often think about that, you know, in this world of, you know, entrepreneurial prowess. I mean, so many of us don't have a friggin' clue what we're doing. And the only thing I know for sure is that I can't tell people, I got to show them. And again, it's that idea with kids, right? Like if I'm disconnected from this team, they won't be well regulated. If they're disconnected from me, I won't be well regulated. And so how do I build those things into place where, you know, we get the opportunity for eye contact. We get the opportunity to sit down together. We get the opportunity to even, okay, fine, then let's turn on our meeting because I need to see you. You need to see me, right? Those things become really critical. And even then, I mean, the opportunity for disconnect is always there. And, you know, it doesn't always work out well, you know, given people's stories and their experiences. But I think you give yourself a much better bet of getting people motivated and connected when you effort to get face-to-face with them.
Yeah, so important. So important. I'd love for you to share with our audience, how can they find out more about the work that you do, how they can connect with you and your team? What's the best way?
Oh, I would love that. We are, the website is drjodycarrington.com. And then I'm always on social. So we are big Instagrammers and Facebookers and Twitter, all at drjodycarrington.com. Yeah, I mean, I've written a couple of books and the next book comes out. It's HarperCollins book. It's due out in December. It's called If You Only Knew. And it's really about all the things we talked about today. If we just knew how amazing, how much we mattered to so many, my God, I think we would be so much more available in this world. So I'm so grateful you had me. This was so fun.
It was. Thank you so very much for sharing. And I mean, just what you said there, I think is just such a wonderful way to end the show. If we only knew how much we mattered to others. If you hear of people that I don't think I matter to others, you know, how often people say that. In actual fact, you do.
Oh,
you know, you do. You matter way more to people than you'll ever know. So I cannot wait for that book. So head on over to the website, drjodycarrington.com. And I'm sure that as the publication date nears that, and you've probably got lots of other content and other information across your socials that certainly speak into that as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by theinfluencealliance.com. Want to influence real change with your message by becoming known as a trusted authority in your industry while building a sustainable and scalable business you love? Find out how by accessing our free podcast series at www.theinfluencealliance.com/podcast series. That's theinfluencealliance.com/podcast series.